Hey guys, thank you for joining me. Um, Today I have a very special couple, Brian and Samarra, and they are couples coaches. And Samarra does mental health therapy. Um, Thank you guys for coming on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us more about what you guys do?
So I'll start with the therapy piece first. So I am Samarra Rogers, and I am a licensed clinical social worker in the states of Virginia, Maine, Georgia, and District of Columbia. I have been practicing as a social worker for the last, I would say, over 17, 18 years. I started out, so to give you where I received my education, I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University. I received my undergraduate degree as in criminal justice and my master's in social work. I worked for Richmond Department of Social Services as a CPS worker, Child Protective Services worker for a little over a year. And then I went into being a clinician in a day treatment program in the school systems. And I did that for about 4 school seasons or 4 school semesters. And after that, I went into being a renal social worker at DaVita Dialysis, where I offered, I did a lot of everything. I did therapy, I did case management work, working with patients dealing with kidney failure. A lot of the times, a lot of them dealt with a lot of adjusting. So adjustment disorder, because of course, your life change when you have to navigate with treatment that's life sustaining. So I spent about 11 years there, finally passed my clinical exam. Praise the Lord. That's a testimony within itself. And I decided to walk away from being a renal social worker into becoming a therapist. I believe that the Lord has purpose for me here. I specialize mostly in anxiety and some depression, as well as, and that's with women, men, teens alike. And then my husband and we often do the couples coaching together. Now, I do have couples separate. If you just want soul therapy, I do that as well, but we do it together as coaches so that you can get the perspective of both man and woman.
Right. And I don't know if I go to extensive background, but just to give you a quick one, undergrad in psychology, got my master's in human service counseling with a specialization in executive leadership. I've worked in mental health since a long time. It was going on 19 years. God, 19 years.
Yeah, because I think it was before we got married.
Yeah, 2004. Yeah, 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I've worked on both sides of the coin. I've worked with clients and I've worked in the more legal part of it, where making sure that providers are providing the actual service they're supposed to, and evaluating their medical records and things like that. I also have also am licensed as a marriage coach as well. So that's kind of sparked also part of our wanting to do marriage coaching together. Yeah, because we saw a lot of our own personal friends and family members. Yeah,
trying to navigate
marriages and also going through divorces and things like that. And we wanted to kind of put a plug to those holes, per se, to really kind of pour into marriages.
Yeah. And really also share our own experience, because that doesn't make us perfect. That just means that the devil fights us even more, trying to, navigate and help others in their relationship. So we believe that the Lord has brought us together to do such a thing, and we do enjoy it.
Yeah.
That is beautiful, and I love it. And I get it from both perspectives. The couples coaching. My personal philosophy is that family is the key to successful living. and the strength of the word.
Yeah.
Take care of your family, and then it'll take care of our broader family, so to say. So I love that you guys are both working on that together.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Every day. Every day.
Working on this together.
Every day.
That's the foundation. Us.
Got to get your core straight. Just like, you're working out, you got to get your core.
Yes.
Yeah.
Strengthen
it.
So.
And it's not always easy.
Oh, no.
Never.
No. Nobody wants to get up and say, I'm going to the gym. I want to go work out.
Right.
Same thing.
And that's the same thing when you go through disagreements in a marriage. It's like, I don't want to say sorry. I've said sorry 50 million times first. It's your turn. Like we've been through a gamut of things. We've almost been married for 17 years in July. Coming up in July, we'll be married for 17 years. So we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the upcoming 17.
Thank you.
On the topic of marriages, how does anxiety affect marriage?
You want to go?
It's you know what?
It can sometimes affect marriage in a negative way, for sure. When the spouses don't know how to recognize the symptoms or triggers that occur when the spouse is navigating through the anxiety. This can cause a breakdown with their interpersonal connections, leaving one or both spouses feeling unheard,
misunderstood, or unloved many times.
Yeah.
So have you guys noticed the way that different genders in the relationship experience anxiety or even depression?
Oh, yeah, of course. With males, we tend to see them shut down more often. When it comes to anxiety, they're more quiet.
Yeah.
We'll speak to
them. With women, we are, of course, more verbal. We're more outward with how we are reacting and responding to anxiety. We tend to get very reactive. We can become very frustrated, angry, irritated very easily, and so many other things.
Right. But you also have to keep in mind that even though that tends to be the case, you have to always remember that we are all a myriad of different individuals. We all have different experiences and things that interconnect in our lives that will affect how we react to different stimuli and different triggers in our lives. So, and even to the point where if you have one spouse that's going through an issue with anxiety, the other spouse can start experiencing anxiety too, because they don't know how to best help.
How to respond.
Right.
And so because you don't know how to respond, both parties begin dealing with a level of anxiety. And what do you do? And our solution first is always God. So, and that's us. We're Christians. I know that that's not everybody's story, but I feel like through prayer, that has helped us to navigate through some of those more difficult times, because of course, experiencing anxiety at the same time is not necessarily your ideal situation, but
not at all.
Not
at all. And in marriages, you don't always have ideal situations whatsoever. You would hope that's the case, but you're gonna have sometimes where one spouse is up and one spouse is down, and sometimes where you both clashing, and you gotta really take some time to sit down and figure out, okay, what's really triggering you during this time? What's really causing you this anxiety? And a lot of times people forget that it's okay to say, you know what? We don't agree right now.
Yeah.
We're both experiencing kind of a breakdown right now. Let's take a breath.
Let's take a break. Let's tap out,
take a nap, go get some food.
Or just put it on the shelf. Like I like to tell my couples a lot of times, when you find yourself in a disagreement like that, I tell them to shelf that situation and that conversation. And they first, before they do that, they need to have a conversation with one another. And we like to call those communication check-ins. So where they come and they agree to a time. So you're giving yourself, between these disagreements, 24 hours, however long you all agree upon. You give yourself that limit so that y'all go your separate ways, cool off, get yourself together. But the goal is to come back and address the situation in a more healthier manner. Also, with that, we think that it's wise to seek wise counsel. Somebody that you trust, a therapist, sometimes a pastor, a friend, like you.
Exactly.
That can, they help to turn their situation around. So.
And some couples even, and it really depends on the foundations that you set at the very beginning with when you have no disagreements. So if you have a plan set in place, say, you know what, like you said, this time we'll shelve it. Or some couples, when they get in the heat of the moment, they'll use like a code word, something crazy like pineapple.
Right.
And if you call it, that things going out of hand.
Yeah.
If you picture a pineapple in your head, okay, things going bonkers. Let's put this off to the shelf for a second and get back to what we need to be doing.
What happens when you have that one partner that just won't stop?
And so I think that is an individual situation. And when you have a spouse that's not willing to stop, when they're continuing to go, I think it's safe for the other spouse to say, hey, things have gotten way too far. I'm going to go and take a break. I'll come right back. So if that person needs to leave the house, as long as you are sharing with that person what you're going to do, I think it's safe to leave the situation for the moment, because where are you going? How far do you think that situation is going to get with the other spouse, out of control, spazzing out, and you're there not knowing what to do? So sometimes just kind of leaving the situation, so that when you return, in hopes everything will kind of be calm enough to either address it or just still be in a neutralized environment or space.
Right. Just like I kind of liken it to a kettle on the stove. It has a certain amount of water and it's boiling and that steam is flying out. Eventually, that pot's going to run out of water and it's going to run out of steam and it's going to cool off.
Yeah.
And you have to allow sometimes a person to run out of steam first, because they're overboiling, they're hot, and they really have lost control at that point. So eventually that water they'll run out of steam and come down back to the earth, and so they can say, you know what, I can have a conversation now.
Yeah.
Or at least attempt to start processing what happened.
And I think even before that, so here's the thing. I can always tell when communication is lacking in a marriage or a relationship, because you have situations like that occur more often than not, when the other one party is so out of hand, so uncontrollable, that you don't see the situation getting anywhere. And that is when I explain to my couples, it is very imperative for you all to have communication check-ins. I even send them a communication check card that we've created as an example for them to kind of start talking, because some people feel like they're talking with just this surface talk, this surface communication, and you need to go deeper than that. It's way deeper than just, oh, how you doing? How was your day? Those types of things. You need to be asking questions, what's the temperature of our marriage?
Right.
How are you feeling? How can I serve you better? How can you serve me better? That sort of thing. And so when you're doing that more often than not, you will begin to see that the spouse that was uncontrollable becomes now a little better, because now there's a trust being developed. Now you're creating a safe space for one another to be seen and heard, and you can move from that.
But it also goes into, as far as those anxiety triggers, it also gives you opportunity to, like you said, go beyond that surface level, but dig deeper into the causes and root causes for why you're having the anxieties in the first place.
That part.
Because if you sit there and talk about it, you don't really know, but it really takes time to talk with your spouse and really take time to dig in and say, you know what really happened? Maybe something happened in your past, that really kind of affects you now. And it,
what's the root of that? Sometimes it's family things. It's how we were raised. We come from environments where you don't see a blueprint or an example of a marriage or a relationship, a positive relationship, or communication for that matter. Some of us don't even know how to communicate healthy because that's not what we saw. I'm a firm believer that more is caught than taught. And so what you have seen in the 18 years that you're usually with your parents or in their homes, that's what you tend to take with you into other relationships.
and even some of those unspoken fears that you have that you don't even recognize you have them until the situation prompts itself to the surface.
That part.
I mean, people always talk about the iceberg example where you're only seeing the tip of the surface, and there's so much going on beneath that water that you don't even recognize is there until some starts to chip off and floating to the surface.
Right.
That is great advice. Brian, you mentioned something and it made me pick up a pen. It hit home. What do you do for couples who are blaming each other for mistakes of their parents or mistakes that they endured in the past?
So, okay, when you're blaming somebody for something that happens in the past, it's really a point where you and your spouse have to dig into the like Samarra said, the roots of that issue, because ultimately it's not that person's fault, but it's still something that that spouse is grappling with and dealing with, and it provokes those fears to the surface. Again, we're talking about that iceberg example. It provokes those fears to the surface now, where you're seeing something that you might not have recognized before. So now you're blaming somebody for something that they never caused.
Well, they feel like you caused it because you triggered them.
In the moment, it triggers you.
Triggered them to a past pain.
Right.
So they were triggered into this past pain and not identifying it as such. And so when you have not done the work individually to get through some of those pain points that you have experienced during your upbringing or in your past, they tend to come out in your relationship. And so Brian and I always say we're human mirrors for one another.
Right.
So he sees things within me and I see things within him, and we often call each other out. And there was moments in our marriage where we both would find ourselves upset and angry with each other for calling each other out on those things. But it wasn't a him issue or it wasn't a me issue. It's I need to go to God and figure out what type of work I need to do spiritually to overcome this so that I can be the best version of myself in my marriage.
Or even personally going to therapy ourselves to dig up some of those things. And even at this age, finding things that, you know what, I never looked at it that way before.
Right.
That's maybe the reason why I've been acting away this whole time.
Exactly.
So now that I recognize the issue, let me uproot that thing, dig it up so I can walk in freedom. And a lot of times we're not walking in freedom because we allow we're not processing our pain like we should. And we're allowing that little molehill to turn into a mountain.
Yes.
And we're not allowing our spouses to even scale it. We're putting a boundary up for them to even be able to come over and help us out.
Right. Because you are so afraid that they're going to do to you what you have experienced in the past, what your dad did to you, what your mother did to you. You know, maybe they abandoned you, maybe they rejected you.
Right.
And so there's a lack of trust there already.
Right.
And so if you're not willing to do the individual work within yourself, there's no possible way you think that you're going to have a healthy marriage.
Right. And the key point of that is don't be afraid to do the work.
Right.
There's courage in doing the work and courage in getting to that root cause and being free from that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what people, that fear really blocks that. It really causes you to think the opposite. You think that if I do the work, it's going to make me hurt even more. It's the exact opposite. It's a courage in that to help you out instead.
Yeah. And that's where the good old cognitive behavior therapy comes in, because you need to stop and replace those negative thoughts. Sometimes when you're dealing with anxiety, even with myself, I create narratives, and I like to say, I'm opening up these different windows in my brain, creating these narratives, allowing it to kind of ruminate in my mind.
Right.
And then I'm spiraling out
of a worst case scenario that never even happened.
That you don't have the facts to back it. You don't know it to be true. It's surely not helping you in the moment, but here we are.
Right.
So.
And so you guys keep bringing up good points. In today's climate, have you noticed that couples have been more short-tempered with each other?
I would say, I think it all depends on what's been going on.
Right.
So here lately, what I've been seeing with some of my clients is they're becoming more anxious as it relates to like self-image.
Mhm.
And so how they see themselves. A lot of times I've found that a lot of my clients who are women, they feel like that their worth is tied up into a title or the accolades, the achievements. And oftentimes they are very anxious about taking those titles away. If you removed all of that, who are you? A lot of them are anxious, even when I give homework to say, I want you to take some time to just look in the mirror. Look at yourself for 1 minute. Just look at yourself for 1 minute. And they get so anxious about that. They tell me it's hard. They'll say, well, every time I look at myself, I just see and focusing on the negative. And I said, yeah. And so that's what I want you to try to change. Like when you go look at yourself in the mirror, appreciate yourself for the good, right? You're still in the land of the living, number one.
Right.
Number two, I'm sure there's features that you do have that you love about yourself. Focus on those as opposed to what you feel like or deem as something wrong or flawed.
Absolutely. But, men are similar, though, in that regard, too, as far as their image and also their identity, because they tie it up with their job or with a particular role that they have. And a lot of times the world tells men that if you're not, this position, if you're not working this job, you're worthless.
Right.
And there'll be times where there'll be ebbs and flows in their relationship where there may be, unfortunately, layoffs occur.
Yeah.
People lose jobs. And in today's work climate, those things are happening. And so many transitions are happening work-wise that a lot of times I know some men are finding themselves in positions that they never thought they would be in. And they're struggling with that because they've lost their identity based off of where they used to be.
Right.
So, and the key with that is that there has to be a learned contentment. Because sometimes those roles will change. Yeah. And sometimes that position will change. But at the end of the day, if you strip those away, like you said, you have really asked, who am I at the end of the day? Despite the title, despite the role, despite how I'm navigating this thing, who am I? Yeah. So to find contentment in saying, you know what, I still know who I am despite everything that's attached to me. Yeah. And I can still love my spouse. I can love my children. I can be active in all their lives. And I also can find joy in myself of the things that I enjoy doing, but also in being a part of a family unit that I've helped establish.
Right. And I think another piece to that, though, is where men struggle with anxiety is who they are in the home. Yeah. So piggybacking off of my husband with the example of being laid off, like a lot of times when that happens to a man, they don't feel worthy enough to be the head of their household. They feel like they're supposed to be the problem solvers. And so now they've lost the one thing that they felt like was helping to, move and shake some things in their lives. And so they come and they're just depressed a lot of the times, anxious, and then they isolate. Right. So they're not telling their spouses what's happening, what's going on, how they're feeling. They're isolating, and sometimes it shows up in depression. And sometimes, a lot of the times, they just kind of retract.
Yeah.
They're not.
They don't engage with their families.
They don't engage. They also can be very snappy. And these are things that I'm seeing in couples that I see all the time.
It manifests itself in a certain anger at himself. Right. Because he feel like he's not providing and he's not doing everything that he felt like he was supposed to do. And that's the anxiety, the anger, depression, the self-isolation, all that comes into play.
And so I think it takes the other spouse. So for the wife, right? It takes the wife recognizing what's going on mentally in her husband, to create a safe space for him to feel like he feel, but help him to move from that, encourage him, pour into him. It's not the time to kick him when he's already down, which is easy to do, especially in our culture sometimes, because that's kind of what we saw. That's
Right.
how we grew up. The man should be doing what he needs to do. The wife or partner, usually will be upset. You lost your job. Like, how are we going to survive? How are we going to do this and that? That's not the time
To kick him down.
him down. That's not the time to go into that. Like, how can I support you? How can I lift you up? Is how you should approach that situation.
Is there a time limit on that?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Is there a time limit on that?
Now,
Now the word says a man doesn't work, you don't eat.
now I would say this.
Oh,
Now, I feel like as long as the man, first of all, give him a moment, give him some grace,
right.
because grace is definitely what needs to be going on
Right.
in the beginning, throughout the whole thing. But he needs to be trying to find another job.
Well, okay, so that can vary per household, because there
Yeah.
are some house husbands now.
Yeah,
There are some house husbands where
Yeah.
but that has to be established between that couple.
Doing that communication
Communication.
check-in.
Right. Because if the wife feels like she's bringing enough bread
Yeah,
to take care of the household as far as financially, but she still needs him to manage the daily piece of the household,
pieces of the house,
and they've agreed upon that,
then that works.
Then that's how it works for them. That's your house. Right. That's your house.
Mhm.
It might not be everybody's house,
Right,
but it's your house.
right.
But
I'm just saying, Brandon, like, everybody's house don't run the
Same
same.
way.
But like you said, if the woman feels like, what she brings home enough, you know what I mean?
Right.
She's bringing home enough. All she needs you to do is support with the responsibilities around the house, maybe doing some things with the children, getting them off the bus, X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't see any issue with that, as long as that is what is agreed upon
Right.
between the two people.
right, because you might have a house where the husband actually helps the wife with a business,
Yes,
and then
i.e. him.
right,
He helps me.
practice manager. But you have to, again, that goes out what works for your household.
Yeah.
But that has to be clearly established,
Yes.
expectations
Yes.
and foundations set.
Yeah.
So that your ship can run smoothly.
Beautifully
Exactly.
stated. Beautifully stated. So I know a lot of couples are struggling with that, layoffs, the depression experience, usually by the male. Men, it's harder for men. I've seen that it's been harder for men more so than women. Not saying that both don't feel it.
Right.
That's something that I've noticed.
Mhm. Mhm.
What tips do you guys have for couples that experience constant disagreements?
That's always a good one.
Well, we feel like disagreements arise from a lack of understanding
Yeah.
and unmet expectations.
Communication for both you guys is wonderful.
It took work.
A lot of work. And we only can speak to this, not just from an education of place, but from personal experience. Right. Okay. And that's what you get when you work with the both of us doing couples coaching, because we are very transparent. I don't ever want anybody to see us and think, oh, couples goals, they're perfect. Right. We are far from perfect. Right. Okay. Let's be clear. Right. Okay. It takes the grace of God that keeps us every single day. Okay. But no, like, honestly, we have been through enough that I feel like we can share to keep others from having to go down the same dark tunnel, if you will.
The same. How do you protect the overall family and the children, especially from outside influences and the negative experiences, without being over anxious and overbearing?
That one is, so it always really starts with your foundation, plain and simple. If you set it up from the get-go saying, look, and teach your children and teach your family, like, the world's going to try to come in at you a million miles an hour. But if you set
strong and solid
foundations and expectations,
Mm-hmm.
you can help kind of mitigate what tries to come at you. The best thing to do is to be open and honest, have those conversations on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take work. It's going to take a lot of work.
A lot
of work. And you're going to have to adjust the plan sometimes because we ain't so old, but it seemed like now when our parents' age looking at us saying, what is this thing you doing now? You know, type of thing. What is this? What's this music?
I feel so old when I do that. So I try to remain relevant. So I be trying to keep up with stuff sometimes. And my son is just like, Mommy.
Really? So it's a balancing act. But at the same time, even if you don't currently have that foundation, even if you do and you're starting to see those cracks, don't ever think or become so overwhelmed that you feel like it's too late to try to establish something or to repair those cracks that you see, because doing something is way better than doing nothing.
Yeah. And for us, you know, having 4 sons, and African-American sons, to be specific, is we take that very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the Lord has blessed us with them all for a reason. And we try to create an atmosphere at home where we're constantly building one another up, right? Mm-hmm. We don't allow them to speak negatively to one another or to bring in some of those negative influences to pull each other down. We are often letting them know, like, you're going to get enough of that outside of these doors.
Absolutely.
We're not going to always be able to be with you, you know, in different places and spaces. And you need to be rooted and grounded, first of all, in the Lord Jesus Christ. Right. You need to be rooted and grounded in that, but you also need to be rooted and grounded in your identity. Mm-hmm. As who God called you to be. Because like I said, outside of here, the world may try to do all sorts of things to strip you of that. But when we do what God called us to do as parents, and we pour into them like we need to, I believe that God makes up the difference. And I believe that that's how you're able to navigate things. Now, do we have challenges sometimes? Absolutely, because you have children from other homes, you got people, you got freaking the tablets, the computer, YouTube, the phone, everything is at these kids' fingertips so easily these days to influence that it's almost like, I don't want to say be helicopter parents, but you do need to be involved. Let me check that phone. Like, I take my phone, son, at any given time. It can be midnight, I don't care. He don't like it when I do it at midnight, because if I found something, I'm like, you need to be saying blah, blah, blah. You need, you know, and I'd be like, take this off your phone, delete, you know, all those types of things. But you have to be on it in that way, because if not, everything else is going to influence your kids. So if we're not standing for something, they're going to fall for anything. Right. And that is what we are not going to have.
Absolutely. I heard a quote. I can't remember where it came from recently, but it said, with all the information out there available to our children and even to ourselves, there's a lot of knowledge out there, but it takes somebody to really navigate it in order for you to have wisdom in it all. Yes. A lot of knowledge, but a lack of wisdom. So our goal as parents is always to help our children process that information that they're receiving by giving them sound wisdom in order with it as well. Because ultimately they're going to go out into the world and they'll be a part of the world, but also teach them that just because they're in the world, that means they're not of it. Yes. There is ways that you can handle everything that's thrown at you in a way that uses wisdom, dignity, grace, and love. And it's a tough road to follow, but it's one that's so very necessary and so very key.
Absolutely. And just the consistencies, you have to be consistent with the communication. And just like Brian said, like being in the world and not of it. And so we're not the type of parents to try to snatch every single thing away from him. Like, so he has Snapchat, I think it is. But we are teaching him how to navigate that, right? Because guess what? If we kept it from him, he at school, the kids, they sneak and do all types of foolishness, right? Our goal is to help you navigate in that now and teach you it's good to take breaks from these things. And I always say, just like mom and dad have to take breaks from social media, get off of that, not going and seeking that.
Right.
Same thing for you. We're your parents. We know that you don't necessarily have the self-control that we have. So I have to come and tell you, take it off your phone, and I'll take it off the phone for a while, and it'll be months. He'll go without that on that phone, which my eldest son, I thank God, he is not necessarily one to fight us with those types of things anyways. And I thank God that we have so far been able to bring him up in the Lord Jesus Christ, right? And so he doesn't fight us too much. Now, sometimes he'll come and be like, Mommy, can I get this? My friend got this, or they looking at this. Like he's always the one looking at the shows, the gatekeeper, to see if the show is okay.
Right.
But all of that goes into play when you're talking about influence.
Right.
And so it's just like he said, it's work.
But I appreciate the fact that there's enough foundation in him for him to come to me, even at 13 years old, to say, Daddy, can you look at this show for me?
I'll
see if it's okay. Watch it. See if it's okay.
He does do that.
That is great, because I'm the gatekeeper of the TV shows.
Yeah.
Right now, they're cartoons, and these cartoons are innocent.
Right.
They are not. And I'm like, there's no parents, there's no father. The children are like PJ Masks.
Right. They don't have no mama and daddy.
I'm like, pajama mask kids. I'm like, they wait till nighttime to fight crime. They turn their breaking curfew. They look like little thieves to stop them. And this is supposed to be entertainment.
Right. It's funny because I think one of our kids asks, where's their mom and dad? Like, that's what I think.
Right.
Because they're sneaking out the house.
Right.
Right.
They're supposed to be in the bed asleep. Now they got bad grades. And we're not talking about how they failing in school. We're just looking at them solve a crime.
Exactly.
The children poor.
That part. So but consistency, a lot of communication, a lot of affirming,
and just being honest.
With them,
because even in our faults and they see one of our disagreements, we go back and have a conversation with them and show them that Mom and Daddy had a disagreement. We didn't get it right that time.
And we'll apologize. We definitely try to come and apologize. If we have ever had a disagreement in front of any of them or all of them, we make it our business to come back, circle back to apologize, and just kind of let them know kind of where we fell short, but this is how you can make it right.
And navigate through,
Mm-hmm.
That is huge. That's something I've learned with the birth of our son.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was not in me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times you find it's not, and it's not your fault per se, because it's something that was learned.
Yeah.
And we picked it up from our previous generations because they may not apologize. They may have just argued and just left it there.
Yeah.
But we are learning every day that we have to be repairers of those breaches of our generations, and
came before us.
Cause a generational shift for our boys, so that
we have to we have to do course correcting. And is that always easy? No. So you have to be willing as the repairer to do the work that's required.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. Relationships, I don't want to say relationships are hard. They can be definitely complex, right? But I believe that when you have two parties that's willing to come together and recognize, first of all, that you are a team and you are fighting not against each other, but for one another together, you're compromising and you are allowing God to move and reign in your relationship. You're allowing him to soften your heart, give your ears to hear and eyes to receive what he's saying. I think ultimately you will be okay.
Beautifully said. I want to ask another question because I don't want to mess that one up. So I do want to thank you guys. I want to thank both of you for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the great advice. It will definitely help many couples. I've learned from you. I'm excited.
Yes.
Yeah. This was wonderful. We had a good time doing it.
Yes, we appreciate you inviting us to do this.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your platform. And we trust and believe that this is just the beginning for you. I believe that the Lord is going to blow on this and you're going to be blessed. So thank you so much, Brandon.